Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Moore's October Rants. Today's episode is titled Tipping Culture in the USA. Now, this is a huge topic, and trust me, it stirs up a lot of different opinions. I'll just come right out and say it. I don't think customers should be responsible for paying the wages of delivery workers or restaurant staff. I mean, why is it our job to pick up the slack when these companies could easily pay their workers better? It's mind-boggling. Let's break it down. Take DoorDash, for example. They have a base pay of $2 per delivery. Yes, you heard that right, $2. So if you order food and don't leave a tip, that delivery driver is walking away with $2 for their time, gas, and effort. And in a lot of cases, it's not just driving a block down the street. These drivers are covering several miles. $2 doesn't even get them a gallon of gas these days. So you can see how tipping becomes essential for them. But here's the thing. The pressure to make up that difference falls on the customer. And to me, that just doesn't sit right. Now, some people might say, well, if they don't like it, they should stop working for DoorDash or Uber Eats, and the companies will be forced to raise their pay. And yeah, in theory, that sounds great, but let's be real for a minute. People need to work. Most drivers rely on this kind of work because it offers flexibility, or it's a second job to make ends meet. But if drivers did band together and refuse to work for those peanuts, maybe, just maybe, the companies would have no choice but to pay better wages. Still, it's a tough situation because these companies are never going to willingly take a pay cut to ensure their workers get what they deserve. Now let's compare that to other countries. Tipping exists elsewhere, but it's not ingrained into the culture like it is here in the States. In many places, tips are appreciated but not expected. It's more of a thanks for going above and beyond thing, not something that's just baked into the cost of service. But here in the US, it's a totally different beast. We've somehow normalized this expectation that customers will tip, regardless of the level of service. It's like, oh, you're at a restaurant? Well, better add 20% no matter what. Or worse, when you order takeout or have something delivered, and before you even get the food, they're already nudging you to tip with these preset suggestions. And let's be honest, sometimes it feels like they're shaking you down. I remember talking to a couple of workers at Dunkin' Donuts, and they told me how much they rely on tips. One of them said that on a good day, they could pull in an extra $25 to $30 in tips. But on days where tips were low, their paycheck barely covered rent. So while tipping is technically optional, we all know there's this unspoken rule. If you don't tip, you're seen as a jerk. And that's the part of tipping culture that's totally out of control. It's no longer a reward for good service. It's practically mandatory. And that's a real problem. I've even seen apps where you literally cannot place an order without leaving a gratuity. Think about that for a second. You're being forced to tip before anyone has even done anything. That's just wow. If that's not an example of tipping culture gone haywire, I don't know what is. And let me be clear, I'm all for tipping delivery drivers, especially the folks out there grinding for DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, you name it. They deserve good tips, no question. I mean, when someone's driving 10 miles to bring you food, that's time, gas, and wear and tear on their car. They should be getting $5, $6, $7 for that effort, at least. It makes it worth their while. The real issue is that the companies could step up and pay these people better, but instead, they leave it up to us, the customers, to make sure their workers get a decent wage. It's frustrating. Now, I get that some people can't always afford to leave a tip, but there's a difference between someone genuinely struggling financially and someone who's just cheap. We've all seen the stories, right? A delivery driver leaves a note or takes to social media complaining that they didn't get a tip or that the tip wasn't big enough. Look, guilting people into tipping isn't going to solve the problem. It might work on a few, but most people aren't going to feel compelled to give more just because they were called out. In the end, I wish tipping here was treated more like it is in other countries. A nice bonus, but not an expectation. It should be a true option, not something that makes you look like a terrible person if you don't participate. Unfortunately, we're far from that reality right now. And until companies decide to actually pay their workers livable wages, tipping culture in America will remain this out-of-control, guilt-fueled system. But anyway, that's my rant for today. Thanks for listening to Moore's October Rants. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, and as always, I'll catch you on the next episode. Signing out, take care, and goodbye.